Hi, this is Jennifer from Belladonna's Botanicals, and I'm here again with my partner Eddie.
Hi, everybody.
And today we tend to do videos on a little more broad spectrum, a little more on the philosophical side and practical aspects of occultism. So today we're going to talk about something I've run across a lot in my travels, being a content creator, being on social media, seeing other conversations, where they come from. And one thing I see over and over again is people getting stuck on the meanings of words, and that there can only be one meaning or implication of it. And there's a lot of, as we discussed in previous videos on religion versus spirituality and the death of critical thinking in the occult spectrum, what we're going to talk about today is occult etymology, meaning, context, nuance, and discernment. And if you watched videos on my channel before, I do like to talk about nuance and discernment a lot. I cover it in numerous videos over the years as it applies to different subject matter, like working with spirits. There's nuance and discernment for those reasons. But this is a little more practical, and we're going to have kind of a little discussion and talk about, we're all fancy now, we have an outline. So, go back up a little. So, as a business owner and content creator, I view and interact with a lot of content online as it informs my field of work and study. I could always point to a few things missing in the foundational occult education, and much of that surrounds occult etymology, meanings, context, nuance, discernment. I talk about these issues throughout many other videos on the channel, and we're going to get into it. So, first up, we have context, understanding, and meaning. So what does that mean to you?
So, the first thing is context is king, and context is all of the meaning of something. And specifically, when we're reading ancient documents, we have to consider the historical context, the cultural context, and the linguistic context.
And things change, words change meaning over time. The warlock conversation is probably a good example of something that has different meanings, and some people are against it, some people are trying to reclaim it. And what do you think about the warlock debate?
Well, I do agree with the etymology that it probably comes from Anglo-Saxon for oathbreaker, but at the same time, people don't understand that the oath being broken is not the oath to the coven, it's the oath of baptism.
Yes. So there's a truth in there that warlock does mean oathbreaker, but it is not applying to, coven stuff that came later. I think that came through. Is that a Gardnerian Wicca thing?
Oh yeah, no, that's from the 20th century.
Yeah, so the whole now fast forward to the 20th century, warlock takes on a different context of it meaning they broke an oath to a coven. So now you have people running around going, "Oh my god, I can't believe people are calling themselves warlocks and stuff like that. We don't use that word here."
Yeah, well,
and then there are people who are reclaiming it. Famous authors are reclaiming the use of warlock. And so is he, apparently. My sexy warlock.
Mm-hmm. I use it in it's a stretch to get there, but the Norse sense of a male that practices a certain kind of rune magic that is forbidden to males. Which is a good example of historical, cultural, and linguistic contexts. Mm-hmm. Historical context, ultimately, I think if you want a shorthand for context, the easiest way to understand context is you have to understand who wrote this thing, who's the intended audience of the thing, and what were they trying to accomplish with the thing.
And sometimes those things change and shift over time as people reinterpret them. Mm-hmm. Like, what's okay, we'll take the Goetia. How many modern reinterpretations are there of the Goetia? There's multiple. I mean, there's the demonology Goetia that I have. That's the one I use when I do Goetic workings by S. Conley. I've seen plenty of other variations of like Luciferian. I think Michael W. Ford has one like maybe Luciferian Goetia or something like that. There's a whole of modern takes on it. So,
well, and also, well, the Goetia itself is, this leads back to the, by context, especially historical context, I mean the actual historical context, not Solomon wrote the Solomonic magic in ancient times, or Hermetic magic is Egyptian, or, well, or that the tarot is ancient in any way. The actual historical context. Although the mythological context is also important because that gives you some clues towards what the author was trying to accomplish.
Right.
And understand that this was not like today we would consider things like this a scam, but that was how books were written in especially in the Middle Ages, but the late Middle Ages. Fact of the matter is, vast majority of grimoires did not exist until after the invention of the printing press, because they were written to sell books. Nevertheless, they work, and there's an important lesson in there for all of you.
Is there now? Going back up a little bit, so for me with context, the consideration when I go into understanding a meaning is, what's the intention of the context? Is the intention to be rude and to be using, inappropriate slurs, or for words like, I'll give you an example. We'll talk about this later. This is called The Book of Black Magic by Arthur Edward Waite. Black magic gets to be a hot button issue because it's got the word black in it. It has multiple meanings, and we'll get to that. Now, if I am citing this as a source text, because I'm an academic person by nature, by training, whatever. But at the same time, if I'm sourcing this book, I'm calling it The Book of Black Magic because that's the name of the book. Am I meaning to apply something racial by using this? No, it's just the name of the book. So, and then we have the considerations for context, like, I'm disabled, so I am sensitive to a lot of the ableism that is inherent in occult communities, where it's like, oh, it has to be done exactly the way it was in this book, or it's not going to work. So if you can't go outside for 15 days and 15 nights and build a stone circle and ooga booga, and whatnot, you're fake. Your magic's fake. You're fake. So considerations like the context of something. How is this thing you're doing or saying going to hit and be interpreted by someone like me who is disabled? When you're saying there as part of your occult philosophy of it has to be done exactly by the book, no deviations, and we're going to get into that a little bit more later, but that's a consideration when we're looking at the context, because sometimes things can be read through different lenses, different contextual lenses. See what I did there? Mm-hmm. And then from that, you get your actions and outcomes based upon the context. And from that, we should be able to discern understanding and meaning. These are important foundational things when we're going through, like, I have a pretty large library. I watch a lot of books. I read a lot of books. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I'm constantly watching documentaries. I come across a lot of different content. I have a lot of different conversations online and with customers and clients. So, okay. And next up, since I did my ADHD thing, I've been jumping around a little and was corralled back into place. We're going to talk about historical implications.
Yeah, so historical context is, as I mentioned, it's understanding who wrote it, when it was written, and where it was written.
That is important.
So with let's use Grimorum Verum, I think. Mm-hmm. I could be a little wrong on the details on this. I'm not as big up on it, but let's assume
Yeah, I don't really work with that one that often.
Grimoire and Verum is one of these late sort of post-printing press grimoires. All right, so its real context is it was written in, I think, France in the
Do you want me to grab my copy?
Renaissance at some point. But I could be completely mixing it up with a different grimoire. But the audience, the intended audience is the big thing. So who was the intended audience for the Grimoire and Verum? Well, it's anyone who had the guinea to buy the book. Whereas with the Solomonic magic, a lot of the Solomonic magic is slightly older. It's from the late Middle Ages. And it's clear from the historical context, it's clear that its historical context, its intended audience were monks and priests, because it is assumed in the text itself that you've been ordained as an exorcist. And you don't get ordained as an exorcist, even in those days, except as on the way to being ordained as a priest.
So in order to do like Solomonic magic by the book, you would have to be
have to be a priest.
Yeah, sorry guys, sorry ceremonial magicians, you're not actually doing it by the book unless you're a priest. Historical context is a real bitch, isn't it? I personally, at least once or a week or more, piss people off with easily Googleable historical information.
Which this leads us into the cultural context. So understanding that the way the language is being used in the Solomonic magic, that is assuming that you have been ordained as an exorcist, and then also knowing that being ordained as an exorcist is a minor order, which means you were ordained into it after you're ordained a deacon, but before you're ordained a priest. That itself is cultural context. Understanding things like in the black pullet, right? Why a black pullet, right? Understanding the symbolism of things. In biblical literature, this is really, really important because they may use symbols like, say, the color black in cross-cultural ways that don't make sense to us if we're using, or we get the wrong impression from things. A good example of this is in sort of tradcraft sources where they talk about the black man as a synonym for the devil. They don't
actually mean an African
right.
male.
They don't mean someone of African descent. In the same way that when they describe Black Irish as Black Irish, they don't mean that they were black skinned. It means they were dark haired. And silly and little things too, like there used to be in certain portraiture, you probably know more about this than I do, there used to be in certain portraiture in certain periods a trend towards, today it would look like they're painting Mozart in blackface, but no, that's not what it means. That's not what it meant.
I know what you're talking about. I can visualize it, and I have no idea how to contextualize it.
There were also some things where, for instance, you can find Roman classical statuary and later statuary where the subject has brown skin. That's purely a function of the marble they were using.
Yeah, sometimes you do end up with things like that. Like if I was doing a wood relief or a wood etching, like everything's going to be kind of wood colored. Like sometimes there's just basic practical things like, and also going back, you have to look at what was accessible to people at those times. What was their frame of reference? We weren't able to just go Google things in the 1500s.
Now, and that leads to finally linguistic context, which is pretty simple. It's things like if you're going to try to determine, say, what the Picatrix means, you shouldn't be reading the Picatrix. You should be reading, and I cannot remember the Arabic name, you should be reading it in Arabic because that's the original. Now, understanding the interaction between the process, the historical context of the process of translation that took the Picatrix from Arabic to Latin. That's important. Understanding the cultural context as it moved from Islamic cultures to Christian cultures and ancient, Near Eastern cultures to European cultures.
Let's talk a minute about how that happened, because a lot of things I seem to, there's a lot of historical missing links in occult narratives where, like, migratory periods existed. It had nothing to do with colonialism and imperialism. So how would someone have gotten this if in thinking about going back to 2,000 years, 3,000 years, things like that? How was this information relayed? Like, how would it have gotten there? Like, or looking at migratory cycles and patterns. Yes, there were ones of, like, you know, I'm Eastern European. Mongol hordes were a thing. You know, that's its own thing. But you have to kind of think about other aspects too. Is like there have been many ice ages, which is like a period of climate change. So people are going to, people that are more northern are going to start moving to more warmer climates. If there's droughts and famines and things like that, and until people understood that you can't just keep growing the same thing in the same land over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Well, it's funny because you know what started the human race?
What?
Evolutionarily?
No.
It was the formation of the Great Rift in Africa.
Oh.
And so one side of the Great Rift remained rainforest. And so those our common ancestors with the primates were on that side, and they became apes. The
great apes,
closer related great apes.
What happened to the other ones?
The other ones, because the rift, the water was more sparse on one side of the rift, the rainforest died out and was replaced with savanna, so tall grasses. And so evolutionarily, it became an advantage to the apes to stand upright so that they could see over the grass.
Oh. Huh.
And when that happened, then our visual acuity started getting better, which meant our brains started getting bigger, and we started getting smarter because we needed to be able to see and react to things at long distance and make plans as opposed to
Go stab great bison.
Well, no, as opposed to,
run from tiger.
Right. in a jungle where evading a tiger is about getting altitude and moving quickly from branch to branch.
Yeah. I did not know that.
Yeah. And so the entire history of humanity's movements is the history of climate change.
Yeah. Or, and in more modern times, war. How my family got here, pretty much.
So some examples in terms of context, we talked about black magic. So I don't hear it a lot, but I do hear it sometimes, the idea that the usage of the word black in association with black magic is somehow racial, and I'm sure that some people have tried to use it that way.
I think what it is it's, you ever see someone be like I see this sometimes from medical people who are very like, science only, everything else is fluff. They're like, oh no, I don't take vitamins and supplements, that's voodoo. Like, sometimes things are used in that context. So we're not to say this has never been. I'm sure people will, if there is a way to make something offensive or racist or whatever, someone will find a way to make it racist.
So the historical context for the word black magic is, and this will actually come as quite a shock to most of you, we didn't used to use this word. It's fairly modern. It's kind of... So Helena Blavatsky is the one who basically took the pre-existing term black magic and applied it to the left-hand path, and white magic and applied it to the right-hand path, which herself did this because she didn't understand the historical context of Tantra and the fact that there are actually, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 different paths in Tantra. It's just that the right-hand path and the left-hand path are the ones that are the most well-known. And she didn't understand the linguistic context of what left and right meant to Tantra, which this is one of those things I've heard, I have read, I haven't been able to confirm it, I haven't been able to talk to somebody who would actually know from that culture, but apparently the origin of left hand and right hand is that if you're standing in India and you're looking east, right, the south is on your right hand and the north is on your left hand. And what we call the left hand path is most closely associated with northern forms of Hinduism and, of course, Buddhism in Tibet, which is north of India. And whereas right-hand path, Orthodox Hinduism, is associated with southern India.
And as I'm flipping through this book, it does give up an important, one of the chapters, there's the distinction between white and black magic. So I think some of the racial connotations is, let's put it into race terms, white, black, and white good, black bad. But
and that's not even how Waite meant it.
Yeah.
Waite's meaning for it was he basically used black magic to be synonymous with low magic, which means enchanting, sorcery, doing magic to accomplish tasks, to accomplish things you want to see happen in the real world. So, like, you know, the two things that everybody asks about when they ask about ritual services, getting laid and getting paid, right? It's that kind of thing. So your curses, your almost all of witchcraft is low magic, and therefore and this is
practical magic.
Yeah,
like I made a jar and I buried it, and there we go.
Whereas he used white magic to talk about high magic, so the great work, the spiritual alchemy of making yourself more holy and righteous. And
see, now things. Where that ends up getting, I'm now following the trail of how we get to racism out of that is because people are like, oh, white magic, I'm all love and light and good, and I don't do anything naughty and bad, and black magic is evil and satanic. That's kind of where you get those little nuance. That's why understanding the context and nuance is important. Hey, this is just a quick editor's note as I was recording this, and due to the ADHD of it all, I left this part out, and I just wanted to put it in for clarification. So yes, we are talking about the use of the word gypsy, which I want to contextualize a little bit why we use that as an example here, is that that particular word got contextualized into popular culture and romanticized in some cases as the exotic other, and became entangled lexically with the Bohemian art and style movement, which in the Venn diagram circles back into the New Age movement spirituality. So in this context, we end up with that word being people's names of businesses, witchy monikers, and other considerations. So sometimes we have to use the naughty words when it's like, if it's somebody's like birth name or the name of a business. Like I know there's an incense business that's like Gypsy something, Gypsy Rose or something. So in those contextual cases, you kind of have to use the actual word, even though we know what the word means. So hence why we're including this in the discussion of occult etymology. So it's important to shift the lexical change to give deference to Roma or Romani instead of using the aforementioned word when it's a lexical reference. So, that's mostly what I wanted to put in here, just as a contextual, because I realized we just kind of jumped into it. So, That is my editor's note for that. And I don't think there's anything else I have to add on that. But just wanted to reiterate, not everyone is aware of some of these things. If you happen to be more of an online person, you're going to see these things being discussed more regularly. If you're not online at all, you might not realize that this is something that's been a change. I myself only started to hear it maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, and I'm in this business, so I make the effort to use the correct terminology when I can. If it's in a reference to something, like I mentioned, the Fleetwood Mac song is called Gypsy. It's not called Romani. So, but again, we're not using that as a slur. It's just a contextual use. Lexical changes like this take a lot of time. Even in my lifetime, I've seen, plenty of examples of, we used to use this word, now we use this word, for a whole host of reasons. So yeah. Anyways, we're going to continue with the video now.
So, and to use that with an example of in magical circles, the Roma versus Gypsy problem. Mm-hmm. I will readily admit, Gypsy historically has been used as a slur. Yeah. Not everyone who used it that way used it as a slur. Mm-hmm. Mostly because, in English especially, mm-hmm. Gypsy was used to refer to all sorts of people, not just the Roma. Mm-hmm. And to this day in the UK, it's not politically correct to call travelers gypsies, but that's what they used to be called. Irish travelers were called Irish gypsies for a long, long time. Scottish travelers were Scottish gypsies. Yeah. But they weren't gypsies. They weren't Roma. Mm-hmm. However, there were Roma in the country from time to time. It's just, so understand that, yes, and gypsy itself doesn't have gypsy itself simply is a corruption of Egyptian, because people in the Middle Ages thought they were from Egypt. Mm-hmm. And they're not.
And sometimes this is the thing where now considering the field I work in here, I only started hearing about the transition of this, like maybe, we don't use that word anymore, like maybe within the past, at least past 10 years, but like I'm thinking more like 6 or 7 or 8 that I started hearing it, and it became more prevalent. So I use Romani and Roma, but there are contextual considerations. The song by Fleetwood Mac is called Gypsy. It's not called Roma or Romani. Right. So I have to contextually refer to it. Am I aware of the greater issue of it being a slur? Yes, I am. And I am sensitive to that, as we are both. We are talking about this to give you actionable teaching lessons of how to navigate this. And terms like this change all the time.
All right, so here's some good context.
What?
This is not something we're going to discuss, but it's something for you to think about on your own and to research, is the discourse over Mark Twain's usage of the N-word in Huck Finn. Because, he was using it as a slur, but he was using it as an example of the slurs that were used at the time. Yeah. Right? And Huck didn't mean it as... Yeah. That was his... I mean, Huck didn't mean it. The point is that... especially in the English world, because we've never had a lot of contact with the Roma, what else were we supposed to call them? We didn't know any word for them, and we didn't know anyone to ask. Yeah. And, sometimes with the thing, like going back to the black magic thing, is you sometimes have to use the terms that people know. Mm-hmm. And, maybe, someone who is older than us might not, if I say the Roma or the Romani, they're just like, huh? Right. Because they've never heard that before. So sometimes when I talk about black magic, I have to use black magic because that would be contextually the work that I do with the demonic could
potentially be categorized in that black magic thing, as we were talking about low and high magic, not in racial contexts.
Right. So the important part to understand when you're looking at words like this is to understand that there is a denotative meaning and a connotative meaning. So the denotative meaning is the book definition, right? So the denotative meaning of gypsy means someone who comes from Egypt. And by the more precise version is the Roma people. I get that. But the connotation is when it became a slur, right? And so a good example of this that's maybe a little less emotional is the way my ancestors in Bavaria used the word price, which is the Bavarian word for Prussians. Connotation, the denotation is they're Prussians. The connotation is they're awful. Right? It's used as a slur in Bavarian. Because in this much the same way that a lot of Germans use the word French as a slur. Right? It's not because, they just don't like the French. They're using the word correctly. They're just using it in a not nice way.
Yeah.
And that's where connotation comes from. And the point is that both of these meanings change over time. When you're reading something longer, like a book, you have to look at things like text versus subtext. So text is what's actually being said.
Yeah.
Subtext is what's meant. It's the subtle stuff.
Yeah, like a lot of times, and being sensitive to that, the black magic part, because I see people talk about, oh my God, I can't believe after 20 years, I still have to, point out that this is a racist term. I moved more towards using dark magic for things. Because not everyone's going to be, because not all black magic to me is baneful magic. It's not all cursing. It's not all, that kind of magic. Like anything, mediumship, working in a cemetery, any of that stuff.
And finally, the big one. This is a pet peeve. Stop taking this shit literally. There is nothing literal about what we're doing here. It is entirely symbolic and entirely metaphorical. And so maybe the question you need to be asking yourself when you're reading this, when books like this, is not, what does this say? It's, what does this mean?
Yeah. So like I was saying, contextually, I've moved away from using black magic to be sensitive towards it. But again, contextually, if I'm talking about this book, I kind of have to use the title of the book because it's also the word that people know. That's...
All right.
So now we're going to talk about nuance.
Nuance. And nuance is a little harder to define, so I think we're going to go with a way to understand nuance is just nuance. It's details, and details matter. Details like intention.
It's not cherry picking details either. It's right. Kind of seeing the big picture and the nuance. Okay, let's talk about current affairs. It's, what day is today? It is February 28th, 2026, and apparently we've just launched a war with Iran. Now, nuance in that is, okay, there's a lot of bad shit, but at the same time, hi, I'm Ukrainian, is that Iran has been supporting Putin and Russia and the war by giving Russia Shahed drones to murder innocent Ukrainians with.
And it's possible for both things to be true, that this war is illegal and entirely unnecessary, and
it might help that.
I'm not going to be shedding too many tears about the Ayatollah dying. Now, I am also going to be saying I told you so when the next Ayatollah comes along, and he's a lot worse, because suddenly fomenting a popular uprising isn't nearly as easy as the administration thinks it is. Mm-hmm. It's not like we haven't been trying to do that over there for 47 years or anything.
Yeah.
But, and another one, another one is one close to my heart as someone who spent some time in Germanic neo-pagan circles. Nazis.
Oh yeah, and especially for on the Slavic pagan side too, the Norse, Slavic, and Germanic, we've got the whole problem with the Nazis.
Right, and so you have to understand that when it comes to symbols like runes, let's say, there are at least 3 different, off the top, 3 different meanings for any given rune, right? There's the way it's used today by modern neo-pagans. Before that, there was the way the Nazis used it, and the way the Nazis used it was based directly on, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to burst some bubbles here. Prior to the 19th century, runes weren't anything other than a system of writing, as far as we can tell. Now, understand that systems of writing were regarded with a much higher esteem in pre-literate times than they are today. And so when I say that Futhark is just an alphabet, that doesn't mean that it's not important. Or that the rune poems exist. The rune poems exist.
I wrote my first rune poem last night.
The rune poems are simply acrostic poems that were meant to help people, especially the later ones, help children know them. And by the way, the runes are not Germanic. They're not a little bit Germanic. The Germanics had no system of writing until they got it from the Boii, who were the ancestors of the Bavarians.
And Bohemians.
Who got it from the Etruscans. And the Romans, hence, because the Romans did not use Greek lettering until after they conquered Greece and during the Republic period. Before that, they used a runic alphabet because the closest antecedent, the immediate predecessor to the Elder Futhark, is called Proto-Italic.
Oh, yeah.
It comes from the Italian peninsula.
So, following that thing, from a non-Western view, from a non-Western perspective, when do other writing systems and language that sort of start occurring?
So in...
You know nerdy shit like that.
We use the Latin alphabet because it was the Latin alphabet. And the Latin alphabet comes from the Greek alphabet. It was a modification. So, the Latin alphabet... The Romans actually did not write very much in the classical period. The Latin alphabet comes from, like, towards the end of the fall of Rome kind of thing. So, like, the Vulgate is written in the Latin alphabet.
Yeah, because I'm going to guess, like, Chinese, like,
well, I'm talking
Asiatic
like
ones,
I'm talking in uncials. Latin capitals existed in the classical period, but Latin capitals... So understand the difference between capitals and uncials. Capitals are what we call big letters, and uncials are what we call little letters.
I didn't know
English.
they were called uncials.
Yeah, that's not what their original purpose.
Yeah.
The original purpose, because Greek had this. Greek had capitals and uncials. Latin has capital and uncials. Capitals are called capitals because they were meant to be engraved on stone that sits on the capital, which is the stone that sits on the top of a bunch of pillars.
Oh, yeah.
So it's where the inscriptions go. That band you see on like all Neo-Roman classical buildings, like in the nation's capital, why they put the inscriptions there, that's the capital. And so if you look at capitals, especially in Greek and Latin, it's a lot of straight lines, not a lot of curves, because curves were very hard to do.
Yeah, now that you talk about, like,
harder.
a lot of proto languages are very
whereas uncials
linear instead of
uncials were for writing with a pen.
Oh,
They were for writing manuscripts.
Neat.
So, for instance, Julius Caesar, all of his actual writings were written in Latin, but using what we would call lowercase Greek letters, without punctuation and without white space. That's something that was invented much later. So it's just a grid of letters.
we're still talking about nuance here. So we've given you some examples of how nuance is like taking something and really like massaging it, kind of taking it apart, getting to know what it is, why it's that way. And
nuance, I guess a good way to sum up nuance is take the time to actually understand something as opposed to just looking for ammunition to win a fight.
Learn a thing. Because a lot of this, what comes into the nuance, I face this one a lot as a content, well, not only as a content creator, but as an occult product creator. And one of my biggest pet peeves is, because I do a lot of custom work for my clients and customers, and one of my biggest pet peeves is some of y'all occult authors really need to consult an herbalist for the stuff you're writing, for two reasons. You are making spells and rituals with things that are veritably inaccessible or extremely, extremely expensive to source unless that person can grow it and cultivate it of their own. And secondly, and then this goes back to the aconite incense, oh my fucking god, safety counts. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it won't kill you. Please don't make a water hemlock smoothie.
You know what I hear doctors say all the time?
What?
You know what else is natural?
What?
Cyanide.
Yeah. So
the example I use of nuance all the time is the sometimes I see this, that mescaline is cultural appropriation. Mm-hmm. So mescaline is the active ingredient in peyote. And what they're missing is that, and I'm not going to argue whether that's cultural appropriation or not. I don't use it. That's not my culture. I can't get into it enough. Mm-hmm. However, what I do know is that the primary complaint of the Native Americans
or indigenous
of the Southwest United States and Northwest Mexico, who are the ones who use peyote. Not all Native Americans use peyote. That's like saying...
That's again, no, cultures aren't a monolith.
Right. That's like saying all Europeans eat snails. No, they don't. Or, well, yeah, for that matter, all Europeans make good beer. No, they don't. No.
Who makes the worst beer in Europe?
The Italians. Followed by the French, and then anybody in Germany except Bavaria. But the primary objection is not to using mescaline from those people, as I understand it, based on what limited stuff I've seen, which is documentaries. Sorry, I don't.
I know more from reading books and stuff, because it kind of, the entheogenic psychedelics kind of crosses over with the poison path stuff a little bit.
So I'm perfectly open to being corrected in the comments, if anybody from that culture.
Where there's an issue with how it's used, and I believe this, it like all of Elon Musk's, ayahuasca trips, all the tech bros going, oh yeah, I'm going to go get enlightened, and then ruining the world. Yes, that I have a problem with too.
But the primary problem with using peyote, meaning the actual cactus buttons, is that it's not even cultivated peyote. It's wild peyote. Because wild peyote, it takes 20 years for one of those little buttons to grow, and there's not that much of it around.
Wow.
And so many dude bros are now wandering around the desert, the very small patches of desert where it's capable of growing, and they're taking all of the wild peyote. This is a similar problem with white sage, right? In certain contexts, in certain cultures, it has to be wild. The fact that it's wild is important. And Native Americans who use peyote in their traditional rituals, the fact that it's wildly harvested by the people together
it's a part of the process.
Is a part of the ritual.
Yes, and not to burst anyone's bubble who loves white sage and isn't indigenous, a lot of it is illegally harvested.
Yes.
I don't like white sage. I do have a couple of videos. I still have to make the third part of it of all the alternatives and substitutions you can use that do the exact same thing as white sage. Because there are hundreds of herbs that you can use for cleansing, purification, anything in that.
Substitutions.
Yeah, and I've talked about substitutions on here before because sometimes people get really freaking precious about it. It's the same like, it's gotta be by the book, it's gotta have this thing in it. And it's like, I'm not using mullein because I'm allergic to it.
Okay, here's a good example on substitutions. Okay, this is sort of the big question behind the question. If you're saying you absolutely have to use this specific species of, let's say, marigold, okay? Mm-hmm. Why is someone saying that? Well, there's only one of three reasons why they could be saying that, right? That to use this plant as opposed to any other plant is one, there is some molecule in that plant that is essential. There is some material, physical thing in that plant,
Phytochemicals,
that is essential to the operation, regardless of how you're using it, whether you're ingesting it, using it as incense, or whatever. Well, okay. Which molecule is it? So if you're telling me you have to use belladonna atropa and not any other nightshade, you have to use belladonna atropa. Well, is it because of the atropine? Or is it the scopolamine?
Did someone write it in a book once and now you do it?
That's the other reason. And fortunately, that's the reason most people have.
I develop my own correspondences for a lot of things. So the way I do it, I do a lot of custom oils. We're going to use the Goetia as an example. There's 72 spirits of the Goetia. Of known things that are associated with them from the Goetia, from other interpretations, there are not a lot. It's like maybe they like jasmine incense, the color purple, this type of precious metal or stuff. So what I kind of do is I look at the picture. I'm like, okay, I've got to make something for who do I pick? King Paimon. I'm gonna make something for King Paimon. Okay, what are his colors? Okay, let's look at are there herbal and crystal correspondences, incense correspondences? What time of year? What does King Paimon do thematically? So sometimes for, say, like a death spirit, I'm going to put my my necromancy herbs in there. I'm going to put some yarrow in there. I'm going to put some graveyard dirt. I'm going to put the death essence stuff in there. So sometimes you take the theme of what that spirit does, and then those become the correspondences. And when you do that, your possibilities become limitless. And not for nothing, it's your relationship with that spirit, not mine. You're going to be working with King Paimon in a very different way than I'm working with King Paimon. And if you associate King Paimon with, I don't know, peonies instead of lilies or whatever, that's fine. I associate Lucifer with roses and smoky quartz. Is that canon? I don't know, but that's what I've developed as my personal part of my practice for it. You don't have to replicate the book and buy the book. It's all about your journey. And when you're talking about substitutions like that, your ancestors don't want you to have an allergic reaction to something and have to go to the hospital because mullein was called for in that particular ritual or celebration. Like, I am very allergic to mullein. I stopped using it because I can't. And I'm not going to kill myself to do it. And the last thing under nuance I want to talk before we start getting into discernment and wrapping it up is this one I run into a lot. Oh, well, real witches, or if you were a real witches do this. Real witches do that. If you don't do this, you're not a real witch. I've got 2 words for you. You're a real witch regardless. Like when we're looking at articles of the real witches gets a little bit into the gatekeeping aspect. Now, there's a different level of gatekeeping when you're talking about closed practices. That is understandable, perfectly acceptable. I'm not questioning that because it's not my place to. What I'm talking about is, like, oh, well, real witches don't do this, or, the one I said, well, if you were a real witch, you would be making your own, soap from scratch, not using, soap base. If you're an herbalist, you should be working with herbs and growing all your own stuff all the time. If you are an animist, you should spend all your time in nature. And I'm always here when I hear stuff, I'm like, hi, disabled witches exist. We have different things.
How many of these people actually did forge their own ritual knife, though?
Yeah, I know,
and
right?
Used real gold.
Right, I know. But and there's a lot of this pompous posturing. I would say, my honest opinion, ignore it. It's just a bunch of people going, look at me, look at me. It's a bunch of pick-me girls being like, oh, look at me. I'm the witchiest witch who ever witched. Pay attention to me, please.
Real witches don't police other witches' magic.
Unless you're doing some really fucked up shit.
Again, much like a phrase I like to say sometimes, I'm not kink shaming, I'm kink asking why. Like, I'm not going to say there's never a good reason to use aconite and incense. I'm just going to say, are you really sure that's what you want to be doing in an enclosed space?
Are you really sure, as an occult author, you want to be telling people who don't know shit about herbalism to go get some aconite and burn it? Because if you live in an apartment building, you may be killing all your neighbors, your pets, yourself, and everyone else. Because I always use this as an example. I can't tell you, when I was doing a lot of research on these things, how many articles I stumbled by. Farmer brushes past some aconite and dies just from touching it. Mm-hmm. Like, it is, like, not supposed to be, burnt or inhaled at all.
Foxglove is like that.
I mean, maybe if you were outside, away from things where there's, a lot of, you're not in a closed space, but, how many people are doing that on a regular basis?
Yeah, monkshood, wolfsbane, they grow wild out where I'm at, and you don't touch them.
Yeah.
You have to be careful walking around the woods.
Yeah. Discernment is what comes from when you take all these things to put them together and pull out the truth of the situation. And you've looked at and analyzed not just the cherry-picked facts that prove your point. You've also looked at the opposing opinions, the things that don't prove your point, the things that directly challenge it. All those facts, those pieces of history, the cultural connotations, the modern connotation versus the unmodern, old, ancient.
Discernment is the end result of critical thinking.
Exactly.
And with that in mind, I am going to give you something really handy, which is my short course on recognizing assholes. Right? Because they're everywhere.
The occult has a lot of them. The left-hand path?
Mm-hmm. In every walk of life. Right? And finding them is important. And the first rule with assholes is understand that an asshole will absolutely eventually tell you that they are an asshole. And they will do it quite plainly. Believe me. I've never run into a Nazi, neo or otherwise, that didn't eventually let the cat out of the bag on that. Until they do,
yeah,
I'm not going to pass judgment, and I'm not going to say it for certain. That said, there are plenty of people who I don't know if they're actually Nazis or not, but I know I don't want to work with them anymore.
Yeah.
And so the important part is that once an asshole tells you they're an asshole, believe them.
I'm going to put one. Can I put a little nuance on this? Mm-hmm. So I will say this. I offend, a lot of people think, this is something I struggle with being autistic and ADHD. Is a lot of times, people just assume I'm being an asshole about things when I'm not. I'm like, I just gave you easily Googleable information. I gave you context about something. I added something to this conversation, and by mere state of being, I piss people off regularly by just giving them historical facts because they think I'm being an asshole. I'm not being an asshole. Believe me, when I'm being an asshole, you will know, because I'll be like, if you're offended by this, good, be more offended.
If you don't know,
there's nuance.
And if you don't know if someone's an asshole or not, Rather than assume, ask. Now, you can't ask them if they're an asshole.
Hey, babe, are you an asshole?
Yes.
Say, yeah, me too sometimes.
That's another one. Rule of thumb, it's about 80% of the time it works. If you ask someone if they're an asshole and they say no, they're probably an asshole. Because I can be an asshole sometimes.
We all can. It's just, is that your entire ethos and your state of being, is to just be an asshole to everyone around you?
But if you don't know, ask open-ended questions. Right? Bait them. Drop a little bait out there. One of my favorites is mention the Kabbalah. And if that doesn't work, mention the Jews.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
That'll bring out the assholes really fast.
You need to think strategically about things.
And when I'm talking about assholes there, I'm talking about the anti-Semitic assholes.
Yes.
For context, clarity, and nuance.
You need to think strategically. And what I mean by that is, what is your objective? And what is your objective with this person? So you're dealing with a person who has, say, used the term. You know what? I'll give you a practical example. The black sun symbol that you see floating around a lot. That directly was designed by Heinrich Himmler. There is no getting around. And honestly, the idea of the black sun in general is very hard to extract from Nazi ideas.
And that's one that it is very similar and gets mistaken for in I spelled that wrong. In Slavic paganism is, if I could type, the kolovrat, which is an ancient Slavic sun symbol, which looks like that. So you can see why this ends up being problematic, because it looks like a bunch of swastikas. Because again, something that was co-opted by the not so great people, actually.
So if you've seen an occult author use that symbol, okay? First, you need to ask yourself: do they even know what it means? Do they know where this came from? Now, you flying in there with a flying elbow from the top rope and nuking them with that came from Himmler. Do you really think that is going to get them to hear you?
No.
Now, there's a time and a place for smacking that down.
Yes.
Because there's all kinds of people who disingenuously post this thing and claim ignorance.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. Now, if I picked up a book on Slavic paganism and it had the kolovrat in it, that looks very black sunny, looks a little swastika-y.
But even if
I would understand that contextually, the nuance of it is that's why that's there.
And I've had this discussion with people who innocently have used it because they got it from a different author who didn't realize where it came from. And said, yeah, you probably don't want to be privately. You probably don't want to be using this.
Yeah.
Oh, why? Here's why. Because again, asking questions and bringing things out and not browbeating people with it is the objective to win the argument, or is the objective to change their minds? Because I think a lot of the problem we're in right now in this country, in this world, on every level and in every sector, has to do with people assuming what other people are thinking instead of asking them. And also not understanding that there's a difference between someone who's evil and someone who's ignorant.
And then sometimes those lines can kind of blur.
Yeah.
And get really, really weird.
There's I'm not going to go into them because they would get me canceled forever, but there's a whole category of humor about the innocently racist hillbilly. Right? Who just doesn't know better. And I know these guys. Like there's nothing racist about them. They spout the most awful stereotypes about people out of their mouth because they've never met one. And then once they do, they're fine. I mean, you gotta, and I know I may seem a little overly sympathetic to some of these people, but you have to understand my context. I grew up in a place where I only knew white people. right?
Really? Is that how it? He's Central PA. I'm Eastern PA.
Yeah. Like there was a black kid and there was one black kid and one Mexican kid that graduated from my high school class, and both of those were big deals.
Oh wow.
And the vast majority of people, yeah, there were absolutely racist assholes. They were about 20% of the student body.
Mm-hmm.
About 20% of the student body was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Completely fine. Most of us were somewhere in the middle. Kids like me who just didn't know any better. The only thing I knew about Mexico was Speedy Gonzales and Westerns.
Not even Taco Bell?
We didn't have a Taco Bell. We still don't have a Taco Bell.
Poor Central PA.
We didn't have a Burger King.
Yeah, that's right. Because I remember my dad went to Penn State, and he was telling me about how there was no way to get back home from there, so he would have to hitchhike from Penn State back here to the Lehigh Valley.
Now, State College is a lot better than where I was from.
Yeah.
But which is a bit further
but
south.
Yeah, like one of the things I have these conversations a lot as I am reconnecting with, on a more deeper level, with my ancestral heritages. I say heritages because apparently my ancestors all really like to live on the fucking borders of like 10 different countries. So I have to learn 10 different countries worth of shit.
And finally, to wrap it up, what I will say is,
What did
I know and work with and live with in my professional and personal lives lots of LGBTQ people.
Same.
Right? I can't even begin to count the number of times I have inadvertently said something, misgendered somebody innocently, even after someone says their protest, because I'm old and I'm not used to thinking in these ways. And the thing is, you know what? Every time I do it, I say, oh shit, I'm sorry.
I've pretty much, I've forgotten your name while you're telling me it, so I don't have the best memory, but yeah.
And the point is that how do you think, so when I was the big part of me being able to get out of the church was meeting actual LGBTQ people and realizing they weren't like I was told.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you think that would have went if the very first time I stuck my head out of the bubble, I got punched in the nose for not being 100% right on everything?
You gotta meet people where they're at. Like, my 76-year-old small town mom is not gonna be on the same level as someone who has been an activist and, that popped out of their womb with a protest sign and being an activist for the past 70-some years.
And
it's a different lived experience. And people come to it at different times, and that's okay. Because the biggest argument I've seen online, like since the election, is people getting into activism, and there's always someone going, boom, well, better late than never. Like, oh, so that affects you. Now you want to help, and it's like, why would I want to Why would I want to align with this if that's how you're treating me?
Mm-hmm.
And I've had that experience before over the past 10 years. Of, okay, I'm sorry I accidentally didn't come out of the womb with a protest sign and whatnot.
We're all works in progress.
Exactly. Meeting people where they're at, holding space for them, for their experiences that are different than you, is important. And, that's part of where we're getting at. And this has applications beyond the occult. And now, for something completely different, the conclusion. So how do we pull together what we've learned here, what we've talked about as far as context, nuance, discernment, critical thinking, all this? How do we pull this all together and start applying it on a regular basis with what we read in books, with what we see online, with videos, with news, with personal conversations? How do we turn this into a practice, part of your practical magic practice, if you will?
Well, for starters, you have to do some reading, and you have to do some work on this, and you have to do the inner work. You have to do the great work. The most important advice I can give anyone, not just about the occult, about everything, is fix yourself first. And don't ever assume that you don't need to be fixed.
And don't ever assume, well, I know everything that I need to know. I don't need to learn anything more. It's a lifelong process. Keep learning. Keep reading books. Sometimes read shit you don't even like. Doing the work is important. You cannot be spoon-fed your magical practice, your spirituality. You have to develop that yourself. And that is part of breaking free of the church, let's just call it that, as a blanket symbol, from the organized religions and stuff that you might be coming away from, is that you've got to do the work. That I cannot spoon feed you magic. And I refuse to. And there's a lot of people that want just the easy, the cheat codes. They want the Easter eggs, the cheat codes and all the thing, and to bypass any actual process. This is a process. You are not going to get to start to finish in a year and a day on most things. You will have a foundation on some things in a year and a day, but it will become a lifelong practice.
And I would add to that, as part of doing the work, is keeping an open heart and an open mind and talking to people instead of at people. And that means listening as well.
And the most important thing, and this transcends like groups, covens, orders, that anything that is a group of people, whether you're talking about a culture, a pantheon, a tradition, a spiritual practice, whether you're talking theistic Satanism, whether you're talking non-theistic Satanism, is no group or person is a monolith. So there was an example, I was going to use this, I'm not going to name the order or the group or the author associated with it, but apparently within this order, you are only allowed to read that person's work and work with that person's work. You are not allowed to read other occult authors. Do you feel like you're going to have a really well-rounded perspective, or are you just part of a cult? Because that sounds like some egotistical bullshit. And again, remember when we were talking earlier about like vetting leaders and authors and things you like and stuff like that? How to spot an asshole? That to me, I was like, oh, well, fuck you. You do not own my brain. My brain will read whatever the fuck it wants. So that is not an order I want anything to do with. Now, am I going to assume that because that one order functions that way, that all orders function that way, that that's the standard model? No, because it's not a monolith. Don't treat people like a monolith.
And bigger one.
Uh-oh.
Does that mean we completely disregard everything this particular author has ever said and don't use any of it?
Nuance. Sometimes I like the old slogan from, if you've ever gone to any kind of 12-step meeting, take what you like and leave the rest.
Or another example, and Billy Brujo, if you are out here, please return to us in our hour of need. In the immortal words of Billy Brujo, Crowley was an asshole. Like, I don't know if you knew this or not. Crowley was an absolute asshole. He was a horrible human being.
I love when people get mad at me for besmirching Aleister Crowley's good name. I pissed off some like big name ceremonial magician by like not worshiping Crowley hard enough and making fun of him in the process.
Nevertheless, he knew what he was doing sometimes.
Yeah. A broken clock's right twice a day, as they say.
Well, not even that. It's just, unfortunately, believe me, as someone who works in academia, sometimes the people who are really good at one thing are really assholes when it comes to everything else.
Or terrible at it. Functionally, they know their one thing, that is the only thing they know. They don't know how to make eggs and toast. They don't know how to run a vacuum. They don't know how to, put their laundry away and sometimes it's an ego thing because that work is beneath them.
Yeah, we call them architects.
Really?
Yeah, it's always the architect.
Always the architects. I don't know. I worked at an Ivy League, so fair amount of bullshit there. So next up we have conflicting facts are still part of the story and valid.
Mm-hmm.
Because more than one thing can be true at the same time about any situation or topic. Yeah. And sometimes those things can be like doing this, conflicting. Be like, okay, it is this and it is this, and I don't know what to do.
You mean how, like, say, a really horrific terrorist attack, and I'm not going to name any names, and the best part about it is even as I'm thinking about this in my head, I can think of at least 3 examples. A horrible terrorist attack happens, and the response is so disproportional.
Yeah.
That you end up killing 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times the people that got killed in the initial attack.
Yeah, it's a very heavy-handed thing, but sometimes, again, in those situations, when you understand the history of it, you're like, oh, yeah, they've been doing this for like 1,000 years, you know? I mean, I'm sure if the Mongol hordes rode into Eastern Europe, and people are like, oh, this again.
And along those lines.
And it's been hundreds of years, but there's a history there.
It's possible to understand why something is without agreeing that it should be that way.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Like, and again, I can understand why the geopolitical situation is the way it is. I don't agree with it. I can understand why certain occultists are the way they are. I don't support it.
Yeah. Like, you can just follow the train of, like, I don't know, I blame most of what we're dealing with modern stuff is fallout from the Franco-Prussian War.
Nah, it goes back further.
It goes back further, but in modern times, a lot of what we're dealing with has to do with the Franco-Prussian War.
Yeah, we're still fighting the Franco-Prussian
War. Yeah, pretty much. Did you know that?
Well, actually, we're still fighting the Napoleonic Wars.
Oh.
That's what really started this.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Napoleon destroyed the Holy Roman Empire.
He did, no, did he?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. I'm piecing together some history gaps. I read a lot of history. We're one of those couples that, like, our foreplay is just info dumping historical knowledge on each other, and then making fun of Prussia.
These are the first 2 words of German I learned. Really? Oh yeah, I'll give you my version of this, which is the 3-step process to becoming a magician. Okay, it's a little bit different than what you said, but I think you'll like it.
Okay.
Step 1: read everything you can get your hands on, including stuff you disagree with. Especially the stuff you disagree with. Do you know what vaccinated me against becoming a Nazi? Reading Mein Kampf at 16 and not being impressed. So read everything you can get a hold of from a variety of perspectives, including bad ones, right? Step 2: as you are reading through these magical books, you are going to come across things to do. Rituals, spells, whatever they are. I don't know. Right? As you're reading through this, if you encounter one of these things that seems like something you think you could manage to do it. Try it out. Do the experiments. See what happens. And step 3, and this is really important, even though nobody does it enough, write it down. Because the difference between science and screwing around is writing it down.
Yeah, I gotta get better at that. I think if there was 2 of us, I think we might be able to, like, have like a dictator.
There is
a dictator. I'm in dictation. You're the dictator of my heart.
So yeah, find a magician. Ask literally any occult author. Did you write enough stuff down? No. Poke Runyon didn't write enough stuff down, and Poke Runyon wrote everything down.
Yeah.
writes everything down.
Yeah.
Pook doesn't do much magic anymore. He's like 1,000,000 years old now.
Yeah. I've watched old documentaries of him, and he was old in them, and you said something recently or something.
He was just on Angela Puka's
Oh, that's
channel.
it. That's what it was. And I was like,
yeah, he's really old. I'm kind of surprised. Honestly, I was surprised he's still alive.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
That's all you got? So yeah, I hope you all learn something from this. We're trying to do a lot more content like this that isn't like, here's a spell to get your ex back or that kind of things. That's not what we want to look more at occult philosophy, the nuts and bolts, because that is what's sorely missing in a lot of areas, is the foundational understanding of how the universe works, how history has its implications, because that's also where you end up with a lot of people with insane that everything's a conspiracy theory, because they don't know how the fuck the world works. They don't understand history and how that works. So again, going back to one of Eddie's earlier things on vetting how to spot an asshole, look for someone whose entire personality is conspiracy theories and run the other way. I'm not saying that some conspiracy theories are or aren't true. Obviously they are. But if that's your entire personality, you have a red flag personality. Sorry. But anyways, so...
starting with... boy, I'm going to get spicy now. If you tell me the Illuminati still exists, I'm done with you. It doesn't exist.
Mine is the Tartaria.
Oh, God.
We're not. This has nothing to do with the Tatars or the Tatar region of Ukraine. This is the stupidest. I'm losing brain cells even just.
And another one.
It's worse than flat Earth. It makes the flat earthers look smart. To wrap up, is that we are doing more content about understanding like how to navigate these conversations that are happening online, how to navigate the bullshit of hot takes, how to navigate the unpopular opinions, how to navigate, oh, you're not a real witch, and how to have a conversation. That's what's missing. We're all talking at each other. We're yelling at each other. I'm right. You're wrong. I'm right. And you're just creating a lot of chaos and wasting a lot of energy there. So learn stuff. Join us and learn things.
Yay.
We're going to help you learn things. Theoretically. If people actually watch this channel. But, algorithms, y'all. Anyways, we are going to go off and do other stuff. So, thank you
Magical stuff.
Magical.
We need to clarify that. Get your minds out of the gutters.
Where did Aleister Crowley say magic was stored?
In the butt.
Anywho, joking aside, thank you for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on social media. And most importantly, sign up for our e-newsletter. That's probably the most fail-safe way you might hear from us, because the algorithms are killing everyone and burying our content, and it sucks. So, yeah. That's all I got. Thank you, and bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.